I wasn't expecting the trip to New Orleans to affect my life. I expected to learn some things, gain some knowledge, but I didn't expect it to change me and change how I view social work. And it did.
Hurricane Katrina is now designated a Category 5 hurricane. We cannot stress enough the danger this hurricane poses to Gulf Coast communities. I urge all citizens to put their own safety and the safety of their families first by moving to safe ground.
We went to bed on the night of the 29th thinking, when the storm actually had finished its work and gone through New Orleans and the greater New Orleans area, went to bed thinking, the worst is over, everything's fine. They did some damage, but it wasn't a whole lot. We'll be back in another day or two. I woke up the next day to CNN with the city underwater. And the nightmare began at that point and continues, like Ron said, continues to this day.
I know from talking to the students that they had the feeling that for several of them social work became not something that was studied in the classroom, but something that was experienced as part of their lives. And there's no way to provide an educational experience like that except for a trip like this, to actually go there and experience it personally.
It's imperative that we do it because living in mold, for maybe you're here for a week, you won't really feel a whole lot of the effects of it. But the homeowners and the family members living in this house for years on, they'll get respiratory problems, sicknesses, at worst, brain damage, especially for the young children that are going to be living in here. So, this is why we do it.
Our seminar to New Orleans really brought to life my entire social work education. It really brought what we've been talking about in theory into real life practice and really made me recognize what it means to be a social worker.
That you can't, you can't know someone's story in 5 pieces of paper. And so sit down, talk. So something I'm doing now is trying to reinstitute kind of a homeowner orientation, because we're moving on, we're starting houses quickly.
Wrestles with, and for want of a better word, is worthiness. What's the next best?
Do want to move here? They don't have the money. They're not really interested in Section 8 housing. They can't. What do you do in those type of situations?
I think we, as human beings, get so caught up in our own stuff and our own problems that we forget that there's something else out there. Even though I'm in social work and I know there are people that I help every day, I still get caught up in myself. And that trip really changed me because I realized there's so much work to do.
It's hard to describe the impact this trip had on me. It was firsthand seeing the work that had been done after Hurricane Katrina, having the opportunity to remediate mold in someone's home to help them return to a normal life, meeting people, hearing their stories of their experiences. It was a remarkable experience for me and for the 12 students.
Since my trip with the social work aspect, there is much work for us to do, but there are very few of us who are willing to do it. And it really changed how I look at the world, the way I look at clients, the way I look at just people in general. I see everyone as a possible client. It just affects how I relate to people in general. I'm actually shocked at how much the trip affected me and how much it changed me and the way it affected how I view people. I wasn't expecting that.
storm, and the amount of water that's going to flood in the area is going to be decreased depending on how big the marsh is. So in 1839, this is the area of marsh that was there. In 1993, it's significantly less. You can see how much the marsh has receded. And that's in 1993.
Is that because of man-made?
Early childhood development for well over 100 years, and that's one of the realms of expertise that we really have honed and helped to replicate in numerous areas throughout the rest of the state. Head Start and Early Head Start program in the state of Louisiana, we have 192 children that attend daily. Each class is pretty self-contained. It's kind of like a Montessori style of teaching and learning through engaging activities throughout the day. Then we're prepared. So we're making sure, like in the mode of Head Start, that when our children graduate and transition from our program at age 5, they are completely ready to learn in every way, shape, and form. So that when they hit kindergarten, they can hit the ground running. They've got all of the critical skills and knowledge and core that they need to succeed in school. Because we want to make sure that all of the nutritional needs that we meet while the kids are here, as well as all of the supportive needs that the kids have, is getting replicated when they're outside of this agency. So that's 24/7.
As a student, it was an amazing opportunity to be thrown into a completely new environment that's struggling in the wake of a natural disaster to recover their identity, their economic stability, their sense of purpose, and taking a real full look, an inventory into their organizations, how well they're responding to a given situation, what needs to be done in a moment of crisis. And for me, that was just the most unique educational opportunity. On a personal level, I took an incredible amount when I was able to see the human will to be empowered, the human will to strengthen others, to strengthen their families and oneself, and to survive. And not only to survive, but to grow exponentially in the face of crisis.
As a social worker, and for my students as beginning social workers, it was an inspiration to be around professionals who had lived through the trauma of Katrina and who were building their own personal lives as well as transforming their agencies and their professional practice. Each one of our students and I came back inspired by the resilience and perseverance of these professionals as they face innumerable challenges in their work.
We're all connected. None of us are foreign from each other, and regardless of a demographic setting or a physical locale, we are all connected. And what happens in one area has a ripple effect in another.
60,000 folks last year. And that ranges, we're one of those multi-service agencies like and that ranges from working with a lot of children and families and adoptions.
Information-based decision-making in nonprofit organizations through the use of data, information, and feedback loops. And we're also the home of the Greater New Orleans Community Data Center. So
we take care of folks from womb to tomb, about 40 to 50 different programs. We've been actively involved.
We discovered that we only had 3 feet of water, and we were standing there hugging each other, jumping up and down, and we said, what is wrong with this picture? We're happy that we're
because of time is what I can remember. We were there with all the commands. We didn't know the city was flooding until the people started to come in. And you could tell at what level they'd been rescued based on the watermarks on their bodies.
Negotiate the mountains of Afghanistan, find a man in a hole many miles away, but you couldn't get food and water to the Superdome for 3 days.
On our way, so we immediately went into gear to have all of our residential programs, battered women, homeless, mentally ill, disabled children, et cetera, go into gear to get out of town.
And, you know, when you think about the level of poverty and vulnerability of populations that we even before the storm, don't get me wrong, we had our share of, a disproportionate share of dubious distinctions before the storm. Just about less in every indicator of children and family well-being, you know, we usually traded places with Mississippi and the national indicators, and so we had significant problems even before the storm. Whatever supports they were, the storm exacerbated those, so, you know, we knew we needed to try to help. And so, you know, in the midst of kind of being angry about what had happened, I also saw some real, I mean, just examples of people really contributing and giving.
In New Orleans after the storm, the question that everybody knew, they'd say, how'd you do? And everybody knew what you were talking about. And unfortunately, the common refrain was, lost everything. Yeah. How'd you do? Lost everything.